Welcome in here to another edition of Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we are here to talk all things college basketball. That's right. We are here in the first segment to discuss the Champions Classic, one of the marquee staples of the early basketball schedule. We know that it kind of signifies the start of Feast Week, as it is called. All these MTEs, which will be going on across the country and even some internationally, teams getting a chance to rally off two, sometimes three games in a row where they can face a variety of competition. The only place on the schedule where you don't necessarily know who you are playing next. So it's a big opportunity for some teams to get a string of big wins. Some teams are going to try to just rally together a couple more wins to put on their non conference resume that may present less of a challenge. But regardless, it's going to shift things from the top 25 to the KenPom rankings. We are just over a week away from getting the first net rankings. It's going to determine how those shape up in their first edition on December 1st. So, a lot to be interested in here over the next couple of weeks. And that's why in the second segment, we are going to talk about the Players Era Festival. We're going to get you ready for that, a preview of the teams you need to watch, of the matchups that are going to be the most interesting, and of course, who should be considered the favorites going into that one. In the third segment, we have a bracketology update this week, and so want to go through some of the one seed, the 2 and 3 seed conversation. I know that's been a hot topic throughout, and get you an early picture of what the bubble looks like right now. And as always, we'll get you out of here with the games of the week, everything you need to be watching until we speak again. But here in this first segment, we're talking about the Champions Classic, and that means we have two games on deck: Kentucky and Michigan State, and then, of course, Duke and Kansas. We'll start with the game that kicked off the night, that being Michigan State knocking down Kentucky in convincing fashion. Now, Michigan State got some good shooting variance. Their 3 point shot was falling down throughout the entirety of the night. It was a really good performance for Jackson Kohler, for that Michigan front court. Uh, I thought that the Michigan State guards kind of played up to maybe not their best, but really met the moment in this game. So I don't want to take away anything from Michigan State because this is a big game, a big win for them. We saw on the broadcast, if you watched, Michigan State has not had a lot of success in these Champions Classic events over recent years at MSG. They were able to snap that skid, and for the most part, it was because they were the more hungry team. They were the team that went out there and just wanted it more. Uh, from early in that game, they kind of just took it to Kentucky, and there was never a real response. And so they kept their foot on the pedal and just kept building up that lead throughout the course of the game. Really impressive. But unfortunately, for both fan bases, I don't know how much we can sit here and just break down the Michigan State win because I'm not sure how applicable it is to many other big time matchups they're going to play throughout the course of the season. I don't see some of the big teams in the Big Ten having the same struggles that Kentucky seemed to have. I don't see Purdue having a lack of effort issue. I don't see Michigan or even the Illinois and Indianas. We'll see how this plays out, but we've got to talk about Kentucky. What is wrong? And I'm not sitting here trying to just pound the alarm. Kentucky is not going to make the NCAA tournament. That's not what I'm doing here. But if they're going to be a contender, they've got some real problems to fix because we already exposed some flaws, exposed some things that they need to work out, they need to develop during the Louisville loss. And then they come off of that game into a big chance against Michigan State to kind of right things, say, all right, we have a big win on the schedule. Now let's get things rolling downhill. And they miss it. And when I say miss it, it was alarming. Some of the things that went on. You not only had some effort plays that I'm sure you, if you're listening to this podcast, you've seen the clips around social media. Just a lack of effort on the defensive boards at times, miscommunications that just can't happen on a basketball court. Of course, there was on the broadcast discussion about heated arguments between players on the bench. And then Mark Pope, after the game, gives a press conference, which was as concerning as anything you saw on the floor. Look, teams have had off nights before. Teams have just unraveled a little bit. They get frustrated because nothing is going our way. We can't figure it out. We mailed it in tonight. This guy isn't giving as much effort now that he feels like the game is over. Those things, while a concern, can happen. But when the coach comes out and talks the way that Mark Pope did after the game about these issues that he should have fixed and he hasn't done well, and this has been coming almost, was the message, that's concerning to me. Because if this is a continuation of signs that he has seen or something that he feels like he failed in the preparation, now we're talking about bigger issues that could leak into other big games. And as we know, Kentucky, playing in the SEC this season, is going to have strings of big games where they cannot let their foot off the gas. They cannot have a no-show effort that plagues their season. That's the kind of thing that can really take you out of the top seeding picture. And what can lead to down the line, as those events string together, if you put together 2-3 in a row efforts like this, that's when things start to tank the other way. We've already seen the fan base get extremely frustrated with the performance, with the post-game interview, with just the state of things. You're seeing all the online social media rumors, whatever, start. It doesn't matter that those are true or false or whatever people are making up out there. The fact of the matter is that it's permeating this team. Those guys are going to see it. And even when they know it's fake or they know that it's blown out of proportion or whatever it is, and I'm not just talking about the rumors, I'm talking about the conversation about their performance. I'm talking about the way that people are talking about their coach. It wears at a team's kind of togetherness and psyche, which is a key trait, a key element of what Mark Pope wants to build there. So we will see if they can bounce back. They've got a chance now to kind of flip things for Mark Pope to rally these guys together. And of course, they do have injuries as well. And I don't want to completely rule those out because Jaden Quaintance can come in. And I talked about effort on the boards, just a disengagement at times down low. He can solve a lot of that. But I don't think that the Kentucky front court is just, from a talent perspective, just miles better. Because Brandon Garrison is a really good center. Malachi Moreno has been a really good center. Yelovich has at times played some meaningful minutes so far. So bringing in Quaintance, yes, he is probably the best of that group, but how much does he raise those minutes when you're going to have to subtract some from other good players in the mix as well? And then Jalen Lowe at the point guard position too. I know that when we talk about this, we talk about two starters being out with injury. Well, are we sure that Lowe is going to be a full-time starter? Because Denzel Aberdeen was brought in to compete for that point guard spot. And Aberdeen has not been bad at point guard. I like a lot of the things that Lowe brings, but I'm not confident that he's going to just step in and take the starting job immediately. Now, having two point guards who can go out there and interchange, that's going to bring a lot of value for this Kentucky team. But I don't think that they're just going to be a different team when they get those two back. So there's a lot left to figure out for this Kentucky team. They can get there for sure, but they're at a new disadvantage now of finding that rhythm as frustration continues to mount. Now, in the second game of the evening, we had Duke taking down Kansas. And Duke, despite getting the win, I think has some questions that they need to answer. As they go through this season, they're still undefeated. They've knocked off a couple of high major opponents now. They've taken care of business, of course, against the other pieces of their schedule, those mid and low major opponents. They're getting into where the season ramps up, though. And my concerns for Duke that I think they need to address are the shot creation from players other than Cameron Boozer. Because while Cameron Boozer has created well for his teammates, I think, throughout the season, I haven't necessarily thought that he is creating well for himself. Now, he gets that ball at the top of the key. We've talked about this at length. And he's much better from the top of the key than he is when he gets the ball at half court. But he has struggled to get from that top of the key just to the rim, put the ball up and in, go down the other way on a consistent basis so far against high major competition. He's shooting below 40% from the field against those teams. So what is it going to take to get his efficiency up in these big games? Well, I think that the answer is that you get the ball to him in his spots more often. There's nothing wrong with him being a facilitator, but there's got to be someone else out there who can feed him the ball. And I think that Caden, his twin brother, has probably been the best option to do that so far. But they're going to need Caleb Foster to continue to grow into that role more and more if they're going to maximize this season. Because you look at how this roster is built. Sarr is built to be a floor spacing piece. Kamenia as well. Ngongba is in the middle. That is supposed to leave Boozer at the top. And then the ball handler, whether that's Foster or Boozer, will then be able to create from the top when Boozer is not the one who has the ball in his hand. So what we need to see is a little bit more creativity. The system is working, but with Boozer's early, at least, struggles to finish when creating for himself, I think that it's important that they find other ways to get him the ball on his spot where he's not the one who has to catch, dribble to his spot, and then get the shot up. Let him just catch the ball and go up. I think that gets him in a better rhythm and could even improve his ability to create the shot for himself as he gets more and more comfortable against bigger opponents, against better competition, against double teams from defenders that he has never seen before in his career. These are the things that are going to help him develop into a better and better basketball player. And so I'm interested to see how Jon Scheyer can create those opportunities for him throughout the rest of the season. On the other side, for Kansas, you pick up your second loss against high major competition, and it's by no means time to sound any alarms for Kansas, but the reality of this team is that it was built for Darren Peterson to run the show. I mean, we can watch Elmarko Jackson and Melvin Council try to run a show with Bryson Tiller setting screens and Flory Badunga. The talent level is just not at a height that can allow Darren Peterson to sit for long stretches and this team have success against good competition. They need him back in a big way. Cole Rosario is a complementary piece. All right, he's your other big addition this offseason. Jaden Dawson is a guy who's coming off the bench, one of your big transfer additions. So you need Darren Peterson back, and you need him back quickly. Unfortunately, the clarity on his hamstring issue has become less and less over time. During that game, it appeared that it was more cramping than any kind of strain. But obviously, as the next game approached, it became clear he was going to sit out. And the conversation was mostly that it's a day-to-day thing. We're going to just precautionary, sit him out. Everything's okay. And it was like, okay, I get it. If he was cramping, if he's feeling the lingering effects, okay. It was a nothing game. But then the conversation becomes that it could be a while. He was out for the immediate future is one of the things that Bill Self said. And while the immediate future, yes, could just mean the next game, technically speaking, coaches don't talk that way when they think that it's going to be a short-term, end of the week type of injury. But that's what Kansas then updated us. They said that he would be reevaluated at the end of this week, which, of course, we're now on Thursday. That would mean that sometime over the next day or two, we would get an update on where Darren Peterson stands. But on Tuesday, during the broadcast, there was another update on Darren Peterson saying that there was no timeline for his return. Now, this came just hours after Kansas released that statement saying that his timeline for reevaluation was end of the week. So what is going on? I understand that these muscle strains, particularly in the leg, you look across the NBA, the teams are taking extreme precautions to not put people out there after the string of Achilles injuries that we saw over the last year, after the prevalence of ACL injuries. Teams have decided that it's time to play it safe. We're not messing around with it. We have too much money invested in these kids, in these young men, to send them out there with an injury that could potentially lead to a much more significant injury that then impacts their value for years to come. So if Darren Peterson has a hamstring strain and it is keeping him from playing out there, then I understand, given his stature, given his future, why you would be extremely safe. What confuses me, though, is that no one seems to be on the same page. Bill Self said at one point that it was up to Peterson when he was able to come back because he was the one who felt something. And then we get medical updates from the team, but then the team disputes them, and then Self has given a different answer at different points. It's very concerning that Kansas doesn't seem to have a full grasp of what this injury is. And so that is what I want to find out. Have they done the imaging? Because NBA teams, look, I just pointed out, we've had an extreme number of strains, especially to the lower body in the NBA over the past few weeks. And every time they get testing, they give a timetable for reevaluation. And then at that time, they announce a medical update and either announce his return to play or they announce that he will be back in X amount of weeks. It just seems odd that you would kind of leave this floating out there if you're Kansas. So I'm hoping that we get more clarity on this injury because right now we have no idea what the severity is. If it is complications from cramping or if he really did significantly, because there's grades to these strains. Grade 1 is a week or two. Grade 2, he could be out for months. But right now we have no indication. And they're going to need him because they are in this Players Era Festival, which we are going to talk about on the other side of this break right here on Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher. Stay tuned. Welcome back in here on Three True Values. We're getting you ready for the Players Era Festival tournament, which takes place over the next few days next week. We, of course, kick things off there. I believe it is the 24th through the 27th. The teams which make it to the winners bracket will play on the 26th, the consolation games throughout the 26th and 27th. So that means that Monday through Wednesday, you are going to have some of the biggest teams in college basketball facing each other. And then on Thursday, you're going to get still some really good matchups because this field is absolutely loaded with big time teams. So you're going to be able to kick back Thanksgiving football, Thanksgiving meal, a little bit of Thanksgiving basketball going to be mixed in there as well. Really going to be an excellent slate. And then that day before Thanksgiving, that's when you're going to have just some huge, huge games that you're going to be able to watch from this event, which has really taken over without question as the premier MTE this time of year. Of course, the Maui Invitational has suffered from this. You've seen the multiple events in the Bahamas suffer from this, but it's good for us college basketball fans because there are some marquee games that we're going to talk about here. I want to talk about some of the favorites who are going to go into this, who could make the 4-team championship. Of course, a first place game and a third place game. So based on the number of teams that we have in the mix, we will probably get either 4 undefeated teams or more throughout the course of this thing. Of course, the top 2, which will be determined since there will be multiple undefeated by the margin of victory. So that's going to be something to watch in this too, is that teams are probably not going to let their foot off the brake when they are in these matchups. It's going to be interesting to see who is able to pull away and put themselves in position for that championship game. And then the third place game is also going to be interesting because it's going to be the next 2 teams. Like I said, probably both going to be undefeated. If we do get a 1-loss team either in that conversation or further down the line in these constellations, of course, head to head has a preference. And then we have point differential in there as well. So who do I like to make it through to that championship game? I think that Houston, of course, the number 2 team in the country, the top ranked team in the country who is at this event. I like what they have in that first game. They play Syracuse. That should be a win for the Cougars. If Syracuse were to pull off an upset, that's one of those things that just launches you into the top 25 the next week, regardless of the outcome of your second game. But they get Syracuse and then they get Tennessee. Now, Tennessee is no slouch. That is going to be one of the best games of this event. But I really think that Houston has kind of hit another level early in this season. They are, in my eyes, probably the best team today. Right now, you line up Houston versus anyone. I think I probably am taking them. Although, again, Purdue is right there with them. Purdue is not in this tournament, so I'm going to take Houston to probably be one of the favorites to make that championship game. I also love the winner of Gonzaga, Alabama. unfortunate for both of these teams that they have to play each other in the first round, because I think that Gonzaga and Alabama both are teams that could easily make it to this championship game independently if they didn't have the head to head. But they do. And so we're going to get on day one of this tournament a marquee matchup that could ultimately determine who makes it through to the championship game. Both of them have winnable second games that I think they should advance through. And so if you can win that first one, I think you set yourself up. Of course, the caveat being that if that game is played extremely close, it could harm them in their ability to rack up the point differential needed. That's where things are going to get so interesting, is that this is going to probably determine who is at least among the best teams in this bracket, this game on day one. But if it's played close, both teams are kind of harmed in how high they can move up based on their lack of point differential. Michigan is another one. I think that their path is manageable. I say manageable because it's not easy, and no one has an easy path here. That's what we're talking about. But Michigan faces San Diego State. An interesting matchup. Magoon Guath is back for that team. So Miles Byrd and Magoon Guath leading the way there. No slouch by any means, and particularly on defense, which is going to get interesting as we continue to talk about point differential being important here. But they have Auburn in that second game, and Tahad Pettiford has just not found his footing at all. Now, Auburn won convincingly in their last game this week against Jackson State, but there's more out there for them to continue to prove. They played Houston really close, but again, where is the big Tahad Pettiford game? The efficient Tahad Pettiford game is something that we definitely need to see soon as he continues his early struggles. Kansas, how about this? We just spent last segment saying that Kansas, without Darren Peterson, is going to struggle greatly. And that's true. But they might have gotten the easiest. I think that there's maybe one potential easier path if we were to line things up how we wanted them. But they get Notre Dame in the first game and Syracuse in the second game. Now, Syracuse has looked good to start this season, and like I said, they play Houston in that first game. They have a chance here to really kind of boost their stock, to say, look, we are here. These early results have not been a fluke. We are a solid basketball team this season. There's every opportunity that they do show that, but if you're playing the game on paper, playing the game through the analytics, Kansas facing Notre Dame and then Syracuse is well up the list in terms of easiest two-game slates that any team is facing at this event. So, no, they will not have Darren Peterson, more than likely. I know they said reevaluated at the end of this week. We'll see. He could be back, and Kansas could have the best path towards that championship game. But if he's not back, it gets interesting, because I still think that they probably should win both of those games by a decent margin, even without him, even with the questions that I have for them facing top-level competition. But it's going to be much more of a question mark. It's going to be something that you don't really want to attach your name to that pick. You don't want to go all in saying, yeah, the team without Darren Peterson that clearly is just built for Darren Peterson to run things is definitely going to win 2 games against high major competition. So we'll wait and see on them. We'll wait and see the injury situation and how they can perform early in that first game before we start getting really excited about that one. Oregon in the mix. They have the same lineup as Michigan. They play Auburn first and then San Diego State. Oregon is another team that has not quite lived up results-wise to their name. So I'm interested to see how they come out and look in this event. Auburn, I think, deserves kind of a little footnote of if they can take that first Auburn game, they then go into that Michigan game with potential to get into this mix as well. St. John's has an interesting path here because they have Iowa State in the first game. And I think that the winner of that St. John's Iowa State game is going to be set up for a really interesting second round matchup because we've got another kind of triangle of teams here. St. John's is going to play Iowa State and then Baylor. Well, Iowa State in their second game will play Creighton. Creighton in their first game will play Baylor. So that's all going to resolve itself. We are going to end up only one of those four teams is going to have the chance to compete for one of these spots. But St. John's, I think, has the best chance. But Iowa State definitely cannot be ruled out. And Creighton or Baylor, by extension, whoever wins that first game is going to see a path for themselves as well. So much to unpack here. The way that these standings are done, I think it brings a lot of excitement throughout the course of the day. You've got to go back and look. Oh, how many points do they need to win by? Oh, who won earlier today? Has that eliminated them? Who can still climb up the board and pass us in this final moments of day two? There's going to be a lot of good basketball played, and then the added excitement of this tournament format throughout the Players Era Festival. It's going to be fun to watch. It's just going to be fun to watch, of course, over this Thanksgiving holiday. We have so much basketball. Don't just watch this. Watch the Maui Invitational. Watch those tournaments in the Bahamas. Watch everything that's on your TV. If you have the week off from work, congratulations. This is your chance to get locked in on what's happening in college basketball. We'll be back on the other side. We've got a bracketology update for you. Want to keep you up to date on the latest in the field, and then we'll get you out of here with the games of the week. Just said, watch basketball. I'll tell you which games to watch right here on 3 True Values. Welcome in again to this final segment of 3 True Values. We're wrapping up today's show with a little bracketology update. Want to keep you guys up to date. I have released the first regular season update. That's right. You can go check out where your team stands. This week's data includes a combination of preseason projections, early results, a little bit of everything, kind of having to fill the gaps before we get all of the official metrics out at the beginning of December. That is when we will put out our next edition of Bracketology. So stay tuned for that as well. Here in a couple of weeks, we will discuss that on the show when the time comes to. So a lot that we could get into. I want to focus first on the 1 seed line. We've got Houston at 1, Duke at 2, Purdue at 3, and Florida at 4. Now, these teams have pretty solidly established themselves across all of the data so far as the 1 seed teams. I know that Florida will be a little bit of a controversial one because they have a loss on their resume already. They took a loss to an Arizona team that we'll talk about here in a moment, but they still have all the computer numbers. Obviously, like I said, the preseason projections still playing a role at this point in the season. And so that's how they get the nod for that final 1 seed spot by, again, a decent margin over the 2 seed line. Houston, Duke, Purdue. Look, that's kind of the core 3 right there. They have even separated themselves a little bit from Florida at this point. And I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer. In fact, if you look at a lot of the analytics that go into the model, they disagree on who is the number 1 team out of this mix. Right now, of course, the polls have Purdue, but they had Houston last week. They had Purdue the week before that. Duke was number 1 in KenPom coming off of their big win. So there's no wrong answer right now. But in bracketology, you run it by the numbers. And the numbers say that Houston right now has the edge over those other 2. We're too early to get into resume talk necessarily as well. So right now it's Houston with the nod, Duke, and then Purdue. Those 3 are going to fight, I think, all season long for the right to that number one overall seed. And Florida, of course, they can get in that mix as well throughout the course of things. The 2 seed and 3 seed line. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating because we've got Louisville checked in at 5. These last projections that I ran came on Monday and then released on Tuesday morning. So this is data through Monday. There were, of course, the Champions Classic games on Tuesday. We then had a couple more top 25, even a top 5 matchup on Wednesday that was not included in this data, but I will touch on here, so don't worry about that. We'll get you the freshest information that we can. Louisville came in at number 5, followed by Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa State. Now, the 3 seed line was 9 Arizona, 10 Gonzaga, 11 was UConn, and 12 was Kentucky. Alabama was 13. Like I said, after these most recent results, Alabama would shift up to at least 12th. They, of course, knocked off Illinois. That would mean Arizona moves from the 3 line up onto the 2 line, with Illinois falling to the 3 line as well. And that would conclude the movements across those lines based on the latest information that we have. But that just goes to show you that much movement right there, how closely packed this 2 and 3 seed line is. I'm telling you that anyone on that 3 line could easily be mixed into the 2 seed line. You could tell me that UConn deserves to be a 2 seed. I would say probably. But right now, with the combination of data that we have to this point, they settle in just below some of those other teams. That is likely to shift and change over not just the next couple of days, but over the coming weeks and months. I see a lot of these teams staying firmly in this mix. I think that we've got a really solid group here at the top. Arizona is going to continue to move up that board. They have the best resume in the country, and it is not particularly close right now. Win over Florida, win over UConn. If we were taking the quadrant system, the resume into effect here at this point, they would for sure be up there in the mix. We'd be talking about them as a potential 1 seed team, and that time will come. So don't worry. We are just a couple of weeks away from that data all being integrated. And then over the coming weeks from there, as the non-conference schedules start to get rounded out, then we can start to look more and more at the resume that they have built up through that portion of the schedule. So Arizona is going to continue to rise if they can keep playing like this. You've got Gonzaga, who the models love, another team that has hit number 1 at KenPom this season. They are going to be up in this mix. They've got some other metrics that are going to hold them back a little bit, but as we know, they kind of build up their resume in the non-conference schedule and then try to maintain it through the West Coast Conference in the back half of the season. Alabama, a team that has some of the best wins so far, but does not have a perfect record. They lost at home against Purdue, so that's going to ding them in the metrics and in that resume test as they are compared head to head with some of their opponents. So it is so tightly contested here. You really can, put these teams in any combination with no wrong answer per se. But we run the model for a reason. And so this is how it split them out this time of year. I believe that it will continue to shift. If you are upset that your team is on the 3 and you think they should be on the 2, don't worry. You could be 1 or 2 results away from that flipping in the next edition of Bracketology. And now we have to talk a little bit about the bubble because it's early. But these are the teams that at this point in the season, if you're a fan of this team, you need to start rooting for, all right, we got to get things going here. We need to get things rolling and pick up some big wins so that we can not have to sweat this out to the final hours on Selection Sunday. Cincinnati, Nebraska, Maryland, and Mississippi State. That makes up your last four in. Of course, you've got two Big Ten teams in there, an SEC team and a Big 12 team, all in the mix. Then we look at the first four out: West Virginia, Clemson, Texas A&M, and Washington. So now we have an ACC team that enters the mix. One from each of the Power Four conference actually makes it onto that first four out. The next four out: SMU, San Diego State, Oklahoma, and Marquette was there before. They lose to Dayton. That likely shoots them off based on their recent results. And so who steps into that next spot in the next four out? To be determined. Have to run some of the numbers. Likely would be a Memphis at this point early in the season. But of course, Memphis also the highest ranked team in the computers for a conference championship in the American. There's St. Louis would be in that same conversation where they're already in bracketology, so they don't appear in this part of the setup. But if they were to lose their conference tournament, they would then jump into that spot. The other one would be Utah State, of course, from the Mountain West, who is in the same situation as both of those two teams. That concludes our bracketology talk for today. Hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please reach out. Hit us on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever it is that you get this feed. Please, any questions that you have on college basketball, on bracketology, on the NBA draft, shoot them our way. We are happy to answer them. Next week, we will be doing a mailbag. So submit some questions that you have. Any way that you can get in contact with me is fine to do so. Now, as we get out of here today, we got to get you the games of the week. Let's roll through it. Let's go kind of rapid fire here. On Thursday, that being tonight, if you're listening to this the day that it comes out, watch Texas Tech Wake Forest. Wake Forest has been impressive. I've liked what I've seen so far from that team. A little bit better than I thought they would be, to be quite honest, so far in the non-conference schedule. They play a loaded Texas Tech team led by JT Toppin. On Friday, we have BYU and Wisconsin. Another chance to watch AJ DeBonsa, so you don't want to miss that. Rob Wright and Kiba Kita, Richie Saunders surround him on that BYU roster. And then a Wisconsin team that we haven't gotten a chance to watch yet, but is a top 25 team. This is a top 25 game, and Nick Boyd, John Blackwell, really good in that backcourt. You've got Austin Rapp, Nolan Winter in the front court. There's a lot to like about this Wisconsin team. They could continue to build their resume throughout the course of this season. On Saturday, Providence and Penn State. We're going to watch Caden Mingo. How about his early performance so far this season? He's going to go head-to-head with Jason Edwards. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the better of that matchup. On Sunday, we have Virginia taking on Butler. Just a solid basketball game. I like this Butler team. Michael Ajayi transfers in, Jalen Jackson. A lot of pieces on that team. Drayton Jones mans the middle. Finley Bizjack in the last game that I watched them play against SMU was really good. Interested to see if he can continue that role of form, playing against Tice DeRitter, Johan Grunlow, a really deep Lewis on that team as well, Jakari White. I think that there's a lot of talent on this Virginia team. They're a team that I keep monitoring. I have them right outside the top 25. I think that they are going to be really good this year as they continue to piece things together. On Monday, we've got Alabama and Gonzaga. We've already previewed that one for you a little bit throughout the course of the show. So enjoy the best game on day one of the Players Era Festival. And then Houston, Tennessee, the best game on day two of that Players Era Festival. In addition to Houston, Tennessee, probably going to want to watch those late games that could determine what the championship bracket looks like. Could be interesting to see how it comes down to the wire there over the course of the day. And then on Wednesday, just watch the Players Era Festival. Watch the consolation games. The championship will be on at night. The third place game as well. Lots to like there. Some big time matchups over the course of the week. We will be back with you next week. We're going to pre-record, so we will not be discussing the winner of the Players Era. We will find some other topics to talk about, but it will be coming out on Thanksgiving morning. We're going to put out the episode early so that hopefully if you're driving to family's house, if you are in the kitchen getting things prepped, and you want to listen to the latest on college basketball, you can do so. We'll get that out early on Thursday so that you can listen to it. You have time before you spend some time with family. Enjoy Thanksgiving, one of my favorite holidays to celebrate. So, wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving. If you don't listen in time, and if you listen to next week's episode, we will probably have something Thanksgiving themed going on at some point there. Thanks for listening to Three True Values. I'm yours, James Fletcher. Please like, subscribe, share, whatever it is you do with these podcast feeds. Get the word out there. We're continuing to try to grow this brand and appreciate all of your help right here on Three True Values. Thank you for tuning in.